Picture this. A thick mist clings to the cold sea. Slowly, a shadow emerges. It's a longship. Its fearsome dragon head rears up, a terrifying sight. This is the image many have of the Vikings. Horned helmets, savage warriors, descending upon peaceful shores. They came to plunder, to burn, to cause chaos. But is it the whole story? The truth is far more complex. They were explorers, traders, poets, and farmers. They built societies and left a lasting mark. Join me as we journey back in time. We'll explore the fjords and forests of Scandinavia. We'll sail with them across stormy oceans. We will try to understand their world and their impact. The Vikings came from Scandinavia. Think of Norway, Sweden, and Denmark. This is their heartland. It's a land of dramatic beauty. Imagine deep, dark fjords cutting into rugged coastlines. Picture vast forests stretching for miles, silent and ancient. And then there are the long, harsh winters. Snow and ice would grip the land for many months. The sea itself could freeze. This was not an easy place to make a living. It was a land that demanded strength and resilience from its people. This challenging environment shaped the Vikings. It made them tough. It made them resourceful. The sea was their highway, their escape, and their provider. They learned to read the waves, the winds, the stars. They became master shipbuilders and peerless sailors. Their famous longships were marvels of engineering for their time. Light, strong, and flexible, these ships could navigate shallow rivers just as easily as they could cross the open ocean. This skill with ships was absolutely key to everything they would later achieve. The period we call the Viking Age roughly spans from the late 8th century to the mid-11th century. The Vikings from Norway, they were the true masters of the western waves. Their longships, those magnificent vessels, pointed their dragon prows towards the vast, unknown Atlantic. It was a daunting prospect. Imagine setting sail into that endless expanse of water. No modern navigation tools, just skill, courage, and an unshakable belief in their abilities. They were driven by a desire for new lands, for resources, and perhaps, for freedom from the growing power of kings back home. Their spirit of exploration was truly remarkable. Their first major stepping stone was Iceland. They discovered it in the 9th century. It was a rugged volcanic land, largely uninhabited. Here they established a unique society, a republic of sorts, governed by chieftains at an assembly called the Althing. This was one of the world's earliest parliaments. They brought their language, their laws, and their way of life to this new island. Iceland became a vibrant center of Norse culture, a place where many of the great sagas, the epic stories of the Vikings, were later written down for posterity. But the Norwegians didn't stop there. From Iceland, a bold explorer named Eric the Red, exiled for manslaughter, sailed further west. While the Norwegians looked west, the Danish Vikings often cast their gaze south. Their lands in Denmark were fertile, but perhaps not enough for their ambitions. They were also strategically placed. They had easy access to the rich coastlines of England, France, and further into continental Europe. These regions were wealthy, often politically fragmented, and at first, unprepared for the ferocity and speed of Viking attacks. The Danes became the scourge of many a European kingdom, their name synonymous with terror. The infamous raid on the monastery at Lindisfarne in Northumbria, England in 793 AD is often seen as the start of the Viking Age. Monks were killed, treasures looted. It sent shockwaves through Christian Europe, but this was just the beginning. Danish Vikings launched raid after raid. They sailed up rivers like the Thames and the Seine, striking deep into the heartlands. They weren't just hit-and-run attackers either. They began to overwinter, to establish fortified camps, and eventually to settle. In England, large parts of the country fell under Danish control, an area known as the Danelaw. Great kings like Alfred the Great of Wessex fought long and hard against them. Sometimes he won, sometimes he lost. Section 5, Eastbound Trails, the Swedish Vikings and the Great Rivers. The Vikings from Sweden, often known as Varangians or the Russ, chose a different path. Their gaze was fixed firmly on the east. Their homeland, with its many lakes and rivers, provided natural highways leading south and east. They were drawn by the lure of silver, silks, spices, and other exotic goods from the rich civilizations of the Byzantine Empire and the Arab caliphates. These Swedish Vikings were, perhaps more than any others, the great traders and long-distance travelers of the Viking world. Their journeys were truly epic in scale. They navigated the vast network of rivers in Eastern Europe. Think of the Dnieper, the Volga. These were their trade routes. They dragged their ships overland between river systems, a process called portage. It was incredibly hard work. They faced dangers from hostile tribes, treacherous rapids, and the sheer scale of the wilderness. But the rewards were great. Section 6. Life in the Longhouse, Beyond the Myths of Viking Society. When we think of Vikings, we often picture them on their ships or in battle. But what about their everyday lives? Most Vikings were not full-time warriors. They were farmers, tilling the land, raising cattle, sheep and pigs. They were fishermen, braving the cold seas for cod and herring. They were skilled craftsmen and women, working with wood, metal, stone, textiles and leather. Their society was built around the land and the resources it provided. Life was hard, dictated by the seasons. The heart of Viking life was the longhouse. These were large rectangular buildings often made of timber or turf. A single longhouse could be home to an entire extended family, sometimes including their animals in a separate section during winter. Inside, a central hearth provided warmth and light. People would eat, sleep, work and socialize in this communal space. Family ties were incredibly important. Loyalty to one's kin was paramount. Women in Viking society, surprisingly, had more rights than in many other parts of Europe at the time. They could own property, inherit wealth, and even initiate divorce. Viking society had a clear structure. At the top were the kings and powerful jarls or chieftains. Below them were the carls, the free farmers and landowners, who formed the backbone of society. Section 7. Whispers of the Gods, Norse Mythology and Beliefs. The Vikings had a rich and complex system of beliefs. Their world was populated by powerful gods, fearsome giants, and a host of other supernatural beings. This mythology wasn't just a collection of stories, it shaped their understanding of life, death, and the cosmos itself. It gave meaning to their world and influenced their actions. Courage in battle, the pursuit of honor, and an acceptance of fate were all deeply intertwined with their religious views. These beliefs were a vital part of who they were. At the head of their pantheon was Odin, the Allfather. He was the god of wisdom, war, poetry, and magic. He sacrificed an eye for knowledge and hung himself from Yggdrasil, the world tree, to learn the secrets of the runes. Then there was Thor, the mighty god of thunder with his powerful hammer Mjolnir. He was a protector of humanity, constantly battling giants and monsters. Freya was the goddess of love, fertility and battle, while her twin brother Freyr was associated with peace and prosperity. And who could forget Loki, the cunning trickster god, always stirring up trouble. Section 8. Surprising Vikings, Facts You Might Not Know. The popular image of the Vikings is often a caricature. Think shaggy beards, horned helmets, and a distinct lack of personal hygiene. But archaeology and historical research paint a much more nuanced and sometimes surprising picture. For instance, forget those horned helmets you see in cartoons and movies. There's actually no real evidence that Viking warriors wore them into battle. That iconic image is largely a 19th century invention, popularized by romantic artists in opera costumes. Real Viking helmets were usually simple, conical or rounded affairs, made of iron or leather. Another surprising fact, Vikings were surprisingly keen on grooming. Archaeologists have unearthed numerous combs, tweezers, ear spoons, and even razors from Viking graves and settlements. They clearly cared about their appearance. Sagas mention them bathing regularly, at least once a week, which was more frequent than many other Europeans of the time. They also liked to dye their hair and beards, often blonde, as this was considered attractive. So the image of the unkempt, dirty Viking is largely a myth, perhaps spread by those who were on the receiving end of their raids. What about Viking women? We often think of Viking society as being entirely male-dominated, all about warriors and chieftains. Section 9. The Echo of the Longship. What did the Vikings leave us? What is the lasting legacy of the Vikings? They were more than just a footnote in history. Their impact is still felt today, often in ways we don't realize. They were a force of change, both destructive and creative. They connected the world, spread ideas, and left their mark on cultures. Their era may have ended, but their story continues to resonate. Their influence on language is undeniable. Many everyday English words have Norse origins. Think of sky, skin, skull, knife, berserk, ransack, and even Thursday, Thor's Day. Many place names in Britain, particularly in the north and east, end in by Thorpe or Thwaite, all echoes of Viking settlement. Their sagas and poems preserve a rich literary tradition, offering glimpses into their worldview. These stories continue to inspire writers and artists today. Genetically, their voyages and settlements left a lasting imprint on the populations of the British Isles, Normandy, Russia, and beyond. Many people today carry Viking DNA, a direct link back to these adventurous seafarers. They also influence political development, contributing to the formation of states like England, Russia, and Normandy in France, land of the Northmen. Their legal systems and traditions of assembly, like the Thing, also had an impact on the development of democratic institutions in some regions. The Viking Age eventually drew to a close. Scandinavia became Christianized. Kingdoms consolidated their power. The impetus for raiding and far-flung exploration gradually faded.